Trump announces sweeping new tariffs on drugs, furniture and trucks. Report shows global digital trade exports hit $7.23 trillion in 2024. And Iran signs $25 billion nuclear plant deal with Russia.
Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully take office of President of the United States.
Capitol opened the emergency and reciprocity.
Mexico. Canada.
Greenland.
Also, and I don't.
Welcome to the Economic Bulletin. We start off with the tariff policy as U.S. President Donald Trump announced new tariffs set to take effect October the 1st, including 100% duty on branded pharmaceuticals, 50% on kitchen and bathroom cabins, and 30% on upholstered furniture, and 25% on heavy-duty trucks. The 100 drug tariff will be waived for companies building U.S. manufacturing plants. The move follows earlier tariffs that have already increased U.S. furniture prices by 4.7% over the past year. Industry group warns that the new tariffs could raise drug costs by $51 billion annually and disrupt supply chains. The administration is also investigating further tariffs on robots, machinery, and medical devices under national security provisions. In response, the European Union and Japan expressed confidence that they have secured a 15% cap on U.S. tariffs for pharmaceuticals, despite President Donald Trump's announcement of a planned 100% duty set to take effect next week. The EU cited its July trade agreement with the United States, which includes a tariff ceiling of 15% for pharmaceuticals, semiconductors and lumber. A European Commission spokesperson stated this serves as an insurance policy for EU exporters. Japan also referred to a similar understanding with Washington, ensuring it would not face higher tariffs than other U.S. partners. For its art, Britain has said it was pressing the United States for favorable terms regarding President Donald Trump's planned 100% tariff on branded pharmaceuticals, set to take effect on October the 1st. The tariff would apply unless drug makers are building manufacturing plants in the United States. A British government spokesperson said the move is concerning for industry, and the UK will continue engaging with Washington to secure outcomes that reflect the strength of bilateral ties. The two countries agreed in May to pursue preferential treatment for pharmaceuticals, though the deal has only been partially implemented. Moreover, a Malaysian trade official has stated that Malaysia requested the United States to apply zero tariffs on its exports of furniture, automotive and aerospace products. Washington has also agreed to consider tariff exemptions for Malaysian commodities not produced in the United States, such as cocoa and palm oil, with a decision expected next month. The talks come after the United States imposed a 19% tariff on Malaysian imports in August, and President Trump announced new tariffs on furniture and other goods. Both countries aim to finalize an agreement ahead of Trump's planned visit to Kuala Lumpur in October for an ASEAN summit. On another note, President Donald Trump claimed that Japan and South Korea will provide a combined $900 billion in infront investments to the United States. However, both countries have previously stated funds would be disbursed gradually for specific projects, not as lump sum payments. Japan's $550 billion commitment and South Korea's $350 billion pledge are intended to be rolled out over the time based on project needs. The statement comes as trade talks with South Korea have stalled over concerns about financial safeguards. President Trump has signed an executive order to finalize the sale of TikTok's United States operations to a group of American investors, delaying a potential ban on the app until January the 20th. The new U.S. company is valued at roughly $14 billion, a figure well below analyst estimates. While the White House has said the app will be American-operated all the way and that its core algorithm will be under U.S. control, questions remain as to whether China will agree to a full divestment of technology. India's Commerce Ministry has said the talks with the United States officials this week were constructive, with both sides agreeing to continue working toward a mutually beneficial trade agreement. The discussions focused on possible deal terms. A senior Indian official said New Delhi is seeking the removal of a 25% additional tariff imposed by Washington in response to India's purchase of Russian oil. Both sides aim to conclude the first phase of a deal by autumn. The official expressed hope for an agreement addressing U.S. concerns on Russian oil and Indian priorities such as HIB visas and pharmaceutical tariffs. German business daily Handelsblatt has reported that the European Commission is planning to impose tariffs of 25% to 50% on Chinese steel and related products in the next few weeks. The move aims to protect the European steel industry, which margins are being strained by global overcapacity, primarily driven by record-high Chinese exports, as Beijing's domestic demand slows. The tariffs would replace current EU safeguard measures, which expire in mid-2026. While the new tariffs are steep, analysts suggest that the direct impact on China may be minimal, as only about 4% of China's exports went to EU in 2024. The Global Digital Trade Development Report 2025 has revealed that global digital trade exports reached $7.23 trillion in 2024. The sector has grown at an average annual rate of 12.1% since 2020, faster than the 9.7% growth in overall global trade. Digital delivery trade accounted for $4 trillion, while digital ordering trade expanded at a stronger 16.8% annual rate. The report was released at China's 4th Global Digital Trade Expo, featuring 1,800 exhibitors from 154 countries, showcasing AI, digital healthcare, and smart logistics innovations. The Commerce Department's Bureau of Economic Analysis has stated the U.S. consumer spending increased 0.6% in August, slightly exceeding expectations. The hike was supported by high-income households benefiting from stock market gains and elevated home values. Inflation remained moderate, with the Personal Consumption Expenditure Price Index raising 2.7% from a year earlier. While spending has helped sustain economic growth, economists anticipate a slowdown as low-income households face pressure from tariffs and reduced government aid. Moving on to Europe, where the European Central Bank's monthly survey has revealed that Eurozone consumers increased their inflation expectations for the coming year and 5 years ahead. The 5-year inflation overlook also increased to 2.2%, the highest since August 2022. Consumers expect nominal income growth to reach 1.1% over the next year, but remain pessimistic about economic growth, forecasting a contraction of 1.2%. The data comes amidst ongoing debate among ECB policymakers about future interest rate moves. EU Trade Commissioner Maros Sefcovic has stated that the European Union is advancing on free trade agreements with Philippines, Thailand and Malaysia. The announcement came as the EU and Indonesia just finalized their own trade deal. The EU sees these bilateral agreements as building blocks towards a future region-to-region free trade pact with all of ASEAN.
In trade volume, more jobs, more investment and growth. To celebrate and mark 50th anniversary of dialogue with
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has announced plans to introduce compulsory digital identification for all individuals working in the United Kingdom. The measure, which must be implemented by the end of the current parliamentary term, is intended to address illegal immigration and strengthen border controls. The Prime Minister stated the employment in the United Kingdom would be conditional on possessing a valid digital ID. The policy aims to reduce undocumented workers in the informal economy and maintain fairness in the immigration system.
For too many years, it's been too easy for people to come here, slip into the shadow economy and remain here illegally.
Italian business confidence remained largely unchanged for the fourth consecutive month in September, while consumer morale showed a slight improvement. The composite business morale index edged up marginally to 93.7, with gains in construction and services offsetting a decline in retail sentiment. Consumers' confidence rose to 96.8%, slightly above analyst forecast. The mixed signals come as Italy's economy continues to face headwinds, having contracted by 0.1% in the second quarter. The government has already halved its 2025 growth forecast to 0.6%, reflecting uncertainty over the impact of U.S. import tariffs. Revised data has shown that Spain's economy expanded 0.8% in the second quarter, exceeding the preliminary 0.7% estimate, with year-on-year growth revised up to 3.1%. The broad-based growth was led by manufacturing, construction and tourism-driven services sector. Unemployment fell to 10.28%, the lowest since 2008, contrasting with the Eurozone loans 0.1% overall growth. The strong performance prompted Spain to raise its 2025 growth forecast to 2.7%. Indonesia's finance minister has denied ordering state banks to raise their US dollar deposit rates to 4% despite announcements from 4 states lenders that they will implement the increase starting November the 5th. The minister stated that discussions about dollar incentives are still ongoing. The move has drawn criticism from economists who warn it would weaken the rupee while encouraging dollar hoarding. The currency recently fell to its lowest level since April before recovering slightly. Indonesia's central bank has pledged to stabilize the rupee. In South America, Chile's Finance Minister Nicolás Grau announced that the 2026 budget will feature a more limited spending increase compared to recent years, emphasizing fiscal responsibility. The budget aims to support economic growth while addressing challenges in the copper sector and unemployment. Grau expressed confidence in state minor Codelco's recovery plans after production setbacks. Chile's economy is projected to grow 2.5% this year, fueled by clean energy and digital infrastructure investment. The government continues to prioritize reducing the 8.7% unemployment rate. Statistics Canada has reported that Canada's economy grew 0.2% in July, ending 3 consecutive months of contraction. The rebound was driven by a 0.6% expansion in goods-producing industries, including mining, oil and gas extraction and manufacturing. Despite the positive July figure, a preliminary estimate suggests the economy likely stalled in August. The recovery follows a 1.6% annualized contraction in the second quarter, raising concerns about a potential technical recession if growth falters again. IRNA news agency has announced that Iran has signed a $25 billion agreement with Russia's state nuclear corporation, Rosatom, to build 4 nuclear power plants. The deal, confirmed on Friday, follows a memorandum of understanding signed earlier this week regarding the construction of small nuclear plants in Iran. The agreement marks a significant expansion of nuclear energy cooperation between the two countries and ongoing international sanctions. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has warned that Tehran will terminate its agreement allowing UN nuclear inspections if Western powers reinstate sanctions this weekend. The warning comes as a set of UN sanctions are set to be imposed at midnight GMT on Saturday after Britain, France and Germany accused Iran of violating the 2015 nuclear deal. Araghchi stated that Iran's cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency would continue only if no hostile action is taken against Iran, including the reinstatement of United Nations Security Council resolutions. And for further analysis, we are joined from Moscow, visiting lecturer at Higher School of Economics in Moscow, Rami Al-Qalyubi. A very warm welcome to our Economic Bulletin, sir. Sir, given the both Iran and Russia are under heavy international sanctions, how feasible is the financing for this $25 billion project, and what mechanisms might they use to facilitate such large-scale transactions while circumventing the global financial system? Circumventing, I'm sorry. Sir? Sir? Sir, can you hear me? Given that both Iran and Russia are under heavy international sanctions, how feasible is the financing for this $25 billion project, and what mechanisms might use to facilitate such large-scale transactions while circumventing the global financial system, sir? Oil prices edged up on Friday, on track for a more than 4% weekly gain as Ukraine's attacks on Russia energy infrastructure prompted Moscow to curb fuel exports. Brent futures gained 23 cents to $69.65 a barrel, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate WTI crude rose by 33 cents at $65.31 a barrel. Both benchmarks are set to register their biggest increase since mid-June. Moving on to gold prices, which gained on Friday after U.S. inflation data came in line with expectations, reinforcing bets that the Federal Reserve may continue with interest rate cuts later this year. Spot gold rose 0.8% to $3,777.79 per ounce dollars after hitting a record of $3,790.82 earlier in the week. The metal has risen about 2.5% this week. U.S. gold futures for December delivery rose 1% to $3,807.90. For further analysis, we are joined from Moscow by visiting lecturer at Higher School of Economics in Moscow, Rami Al-Qalyubi. A very warm welcome, sir, to the Economic Bulletin. Sir, given that both Iran and Russia are under heavy international sanctions, how feasible is the financing for the $25 billion project? And what mechanisms might they use to facilitate such large-scale transactions while circumventing the global financial system, sir?
Actually, now the global financial system is dominated by the US dollar and the Federal Reserve System. But at the same time, such countries as Russia, Iran, and China are searching to diversify the financial system to be less dependent on the Western system, as is the case of Russia and Iran. Iran is totally cut from SWIFT system. Russia is partially cut from it. So it's quite natural that such countries seek to be less dependent on the American and Western monetary system.
Sir, what are the immediate and long-term economic impacts on Iran's economy from committing to a project of this scale?
Obviously, Iranian economy is suffering a lot because Iran lives under sanctions since decades. There are also energy problems, and actually signing any deals with Russia will help Iran to improve its situation because, for example, in the case of energy, the Iranian situation is quite controversial. On the one hand, along with Russia and Qatar, Iran is one of three first countries in the world in terms of gas reserves, but at the same time, there is a lack of gas in the northern areas of Iran, and during summer, electricity is often cut. So now, obviously, when dealing with Russia, will help Iran to diversify its economy and to improve it as far as it's possible.
Sir, could the financial burden outweigh the potential long-term energy benefits?
For sure, because as I have mentioned, Iran is at the same time importer and exporter of energy. So, and there are some areas in Iran which are quite difficult to reach from the ports. And I talk mainly about northern Iran, and it is possible. This way, it's important to diversify energy ties, especially with such countries as Russia and Azerbaijan.
Sir, on the geopolitical and market impact, how does this deal alter the economic and energy interdependence between Iran and Russia? And what does it signal about the formation of a parallel economic bloc operating outside Western-dominated financial structures?
I think it's too early to speak about financial bloc. We can rather speak about financial partnership because actually Russia and Iran are partners rather than allies. And actually at this point, Russia proved that it's a reliable partner, and after German Siemens company withdrew from Iran after Islamic Revolution, Russia built a Bulletin nuclear plant for Iran. And at this point, each side searches for a partner to rely on, as well as Iran provided Russia with drones at the beginning of the war with Ukraine. So at this point, this is rather partnership rather than interdependence.
You mentioned that Russia is a reliable partner, sir. If Russia is liable to sanctions and Iran liable to sanctions, how could this work, sir?
Actually, the point is that as both countries are under sanctions, they can develop relations and economic ties regardless of the position of the West, because the West already has imposed countries or sanctions on both countries, and it has no instruments to pressure on them. For example, with such countries as India and China, the situation is more difficult because they are integrated in the Western economic system, and at this point, the West can exercise pressure on them, but Russia and Iran and North Korea have nothing to lose at this point.
From Moscow, that was visiting lecturer at Higher School of Economics in Moscow, Rami Al-Qalyoubi. Thank you very much for your valuable, informative knowledge and for your insights. Moving on to the Middle region, scores of delegates walked out of the UN General Assembly as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu began his speech. Dozens of delegates exited the hall on Friday's UN General Assembly meeting as Netanyahu took the podium. In his address, Netanyahu vowed to press on with Israel's war against Hamas in Gaza and assured hostages still held by Palestinian militants that they had not been forgotten. According to local health authorities, Israel's military campaign has killed more than 65,000 people and left much of the Gaza Strip in ruins. South Korean President Lee Myung has announced plans to extend the country's currency trading to nearly 24 hours a day, aiming to attract foreign investors and support the domestic stock market. The move aims to help South Korea gain developed market status from index provider MSCI. The announcement comes as trade talks with the United States over a $350 billion investment package remain stalled, contributing to recent volatility in the Korean won. The currency recently fell to a 4-month low, while stocks dropped over 2% on U.S. tariff concerns. And that brings us to the end of our economic bulletin. Here's what we have been covering. Trump announces sweeping new tariffs on drugs, furniture, and trucks. Reports show global digital trade exports hit $7.23 trillion in 2024. And finally, Iran signs a $25 billion nuclear plant deal with Russia. This concludes our economic bulletin. Don't forget to follow Qnews on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at QNewsEG to stay informed. Thank you very much for watching and stay tuned for more updates on Qnews. Until then, it's goodbye.